flagship business lines at Stratus, and we're here today actually to talk about our new product line, ZTC Edge, which we put out on the wire actually this morning, so we coordinated it with the event. ZTC Edge itself is a product family. It's a product family designed to deliver mission-critical computing at the edge. What makes it a little bit different for Stratus, those of you who know Stratus, and we'll talk a little bit about us on the next slide, is that it's really geared around massive simplification as well as just taking the complexity out of these increasingly complex edge and industrial environments. And the first deliverable, the ZTC Edge 100, which is going to be available within the next 90 days, and we're going to start taking orders on it in the next couple of weeks, is specifically designed for industrial control systems and industrial control environments. So kind of step one was to work here. So wanted to kind of give a little bit of perspective on us, for those of you who aren't familiar with Stratus, and where we fit in edge and industrial environments today. Let's just start with Stratus has been around for about 4 decades. We're actually in April going to have our 38th anniversary. And we have, from the very beginning of our existence, been focused on mission-critical computing and fault-tolerant computing. So we're deployed in many of the telecommunications networks that you use today. We are a staple in transaction processing and specifically payments processing. A very high proportion of the credit card transactions around the world are processed on Stratus computers. Additionally, you have seen us more and more over the past 10 years in industrial environments. And we have really gone to market through a lot of partnerships. So maybe we're not necessarily the first name you think of in industrial, but we do power many of the systems of the first names that you do. For instance, we have a great partnership worldwide with Rockwell. We work with Mitsubishi in Japan, as well as Siemens and others. And where we fit today is we have a software product line called Everrun, and that is used more towards lower end types of solutions. So you see it be deployed in things like baggage scanning machines. You see it in the highway toll systems in certain countries, as well as control room processing and electric power generation. FT Server is actually our hardware-based platform. It runs Windows, Linux, VMware, used extensively in the SCADA and historian world with your Rockwells, your Schneiders, Wonderwares, and GE types of platforms. So again, that's more medium range. We tend to fall into what I'll call the regional or national players. The large international players tend to maybe have more IT support on site. So they tend to build more complicated systems. But again, really our focus has been around simplicity at the edge from the very beginning of us operating there. About 2 years ago, we sat down and just really start thinking about the next generation, which is what ZTC has come to be delivered as. And in that time frame, everybody was talking about the cloud, right? It was, there's a lot of push on technologies like Predix and Azure and things like that. And we started to recognize that there was this market need for simplicity because of that, right? People were saying, well, my costs are going up. I need to contain my costs. I don't have IT resources, or I have sites that have no people at all. This cloud thing sounds really exciting because it takes away a lot of the problems that I have. But as we all know, cloud began to introduce new problems, right? It started to introduce things about security and latency, and all of a sudden networking became a big thing. And a lot of people maybe just weren't ready for it, and ready for it might be technologically, but also maybe business-wise they weren't ready for it. So we started to think about what could we do to take our mission-critical types of platforms and really rethink them in a way that we could deliver some of those same benefits at the edge, on-premise, for these environments, especially in the use cases where there weren't people at all. So we focused in on the left side here of 3 kind of basic use cases. And the first one was, how do we just simplify the architecture completely, right? As you'll see a little later on, when we talk about how hard it is to make these things mission critical at the edge and what's required, we said we could really greatly just take a lot of the complexity and difficulty out of that. We also started to realize that our user, which was the OT resource, was getting thinner and thinner. So they were being regionalized and put into operation centers versus supporting a single sites. They're supporting more sites than ever. They're being asked to address new skill sets. So we realized that this is a resource that needed some help on the simplification front. We also started to recognize that the notion of generic solutions and generic compute is powerful, but nonetheless, we did see some patterns emerge where we wanted to design solutions specific to certain use cases. And then lastly, we wanted to deliver kind of the right reliability. Let me give you an example. While downtime at the edge is a big issue, it's a huge issue, which is why we've been participating here as long as we have, we started to realize that to deliver, there's always trade-offs with availability solutions. So how can we deliver kind of the right type of availability solution? I don't necessarily need to give the type of stateless application protection to a SCADA system that I do to a banking or transaction system. So I could, kind of do some things there that would allow me to optimize the system for the edge even more than I would for, say, a bank, right? So from that, we came up with a strategy to build this new product line, which we call, broadly a converged OT system. We wanted to take our support capabilities, which we're already well regarded for, and take them to an entirely new level. So we'll talk about that in a second. And then we didn't necessarily want to change how we operated. We are a solution enabler. We are embedded into solutions. Like I said, we don't put in the toll booths in China. A company called Shanghai High Tech does, and they build systems based on Everrun to do that. So we wanted to continue that spirit and work exclusively through kind of partner arrangements like we do today. So that led us to ZTC Edge, which, like I said, will be available within 90 days. It's a bit of a different type of system. It has pieces and parts from things we all know. As you can tell, it's a fanless solid state system, big old heat sink type of architecture here. But we do it a little differently. So what we do is it's going to show up on site in a box, everything ready to go. You can mount it on a wall. It can be AC or DC powered. It's all the things you like about an industrial control system. However, it's a lot more powerful. So it'll support multiple virtual machines. You'll be able to consolidate applications on top of it. The systems are deployed next to each other or in multiple sites. So you can actually do site recovery with this solution. And it will automatically sync to each other. So if one goes down and it gets brought back up, it'll sync back up with the pair that picked up. So if you think about it like having hot swappable, fully redundant systems like we do in today's industrial control, it's the same thing, but just with computers and with seamless return and restoration. What makes it different is not that it's a computer. Okay, what makes it different is the software on the computer that allows it to kind of self-monitor and kind of take care of itself. So there's a lot of advanced telemetry built into this system that we've actually borrowed from other technologies we've built over the years. And what that does is it allows it to watch itself, take care of itself. And if it starts to notice something going wrong, it says, you know what? I better start to migrate my apps over to my twin and make sure that the data is safe over there. And then I'm going to call Stratus, because if you have a service contract, the system will call us and say, hey, I'm having a problem. Can you help me? And that's when we go in. So if you think about a lot of monitoring solutions out there today, it's usually the monitor calls down to the system, and the monitor is where all the knowledge and telemetry is. And then it notices something, right? And there's a polling loop and all this other stuff. Well, that doesn't really work because sometimes these systems aren't necessarily connected, or they're connected only intermittently. So we really wanted to build something based on our technology, which is kind of more of a self-protection type of methodology, which is what we do with this. In terms of what's in version 1, the 100 system, again, virtualization, the user interfaces, everything's pre-installed. It just shows up on your site. You take it out of the boxes, you hang it where you need to hang it on a rail or on the wall, and it's ready to go. And like I said, it's up and running in less than an hour. The whole purpose of this in terms of what we give to the end user is reduced operational burden and reduced IT burden at the edge. These systems are supposed to take care of themselves is the ultimate kind of event horizon for this. And then lastly, since it has that capability in it, the downtime risk goes down dramatically. Just to give you an idea, again, this is built on software technology that we've had for years. We literally have 6,000 to 10,000, depending on how you count. Under active support, we have over 6,000 units being supported today. We have over 10,000 out in the field, some of which just don't purchase support from us. They do it from our partners and so forth and our OEMs. And then lastly, this is built around a rugged form factor. I would say that in terms of our technology, our hardware technology today is deployed in a rack mount form factor. Our software, by and large, is as well. This is built around an industrial computing platform and optimized for that. So it can be deployed in a lot of places that your rack mount pizza boxes can't go today. when we built it around a specific use case, the whole idea was around the industrial control was where we wanted to start. We'll talk about where we're going next in the roadmap, but typically we are deployed with a SCADA and some sort of historian and some sort of thick client type or thin client type of technology, really geared towards Plant 4 is where we live today. By going with the industrial form factor and having kind of the lighter weight option, we can actually start to deploy on machines and remote sites more effectively. So we're really about taking this thing outside of the plant floor into new places, as well as making the plant floor better. One thing I skipped a couple slides back was also the price point. This solution, all in, software, hardware, everything, is geared around about a $12,000 to $15,000 price point in the US dollars. Okay? And when we get to the next slide, I'll explain why that's important. We really designed this to try to hit a big sweet spot. And what I mean by that is if you look at kind of our typical FT server competition today in our current product line, it's the high-end solution, the clustered system. To deploy a very resilient clustered solution at the edge today before ZTC Edge, what you really needed to do was kind of deploy 2 server systems, external storage to support the clustering with technology such as VMware. Right? That setup takes a while. Could take over a day in some cases, but let's just say it's at least a half a day's work to get it up and running before you even add the applications and configure them on top. If there's a failure, generally, failover happens. It does. It's pretty seamless. Actually, it's very seamless, I'd say. But it takes a little while. It can sometimes take up to 30 minutes based on our testing. And again, since it's a fairly complicated solution, it does require IT help. This is not something typically deployed by an average OT resource, at least in our customer base. But again, you get the resiliency. It's a high-cost solution. These, just to give you some ideas, to acquire anywhere between $25,000 and $40,000 to $50,000 just to buy it, and then you have to support it and maintain it and so forth. The lower end option is your kind of standalone industrial computer with a spare. Not all of them run virtualization, but you can run that. Again, setup is pretty basic. You deploy one of them, the second one sits on site until something happens. Where it gets to be a problem is if something happens, right? You got to send somebody out, or hopefully your OT person is smart enough to fix it. They can then take the second unit, put it in place, plug it all in, run a restore process from your backup provider or your MCS or something like that. You pull that down. You have to make sure the system's backed up. You have to run the scripts for that, all that type of kind of configuration. And again, depending on your site and your kind of staffing, this could be anywhere from an hour-long problem to a day-long issue, right? The cost of this is surprisingly funny. We would walk into customers and talk about this. And just to give you an idea, we've talked with over 50 partners on this solution. We have multiple betas running today. We're actually wrapping up the beta 1 cycle in the next 2 weeks. Beta 2 starts in the next week or so. And what I'll tell you is that everybody would say, geez, you're building this solution. It sounds great, but I could buy an industrial computer for like $3,000. And you're like, yeah, but then you have to add the software on it. Then you have to have a backup provider. And then you have to have somebody take care of it. Then you have to have boom, boom, and it adds up. And those solutions can be, again, usually either about the same price or a little bit less than ZTC Edge, which is up and running in an hour. You can add your applications and VMs right on top of it. Running in about if you have a failure event, it's all seamless. It's back up and running in about 5 minutes or less. And with our service capability, we're able to protect the system from end to end. So right out of the gates. And again, cost-wise, kind of in between. So generation 1, so it's coming in within 90 days, May timeframe. And you see that we're kind of building it around one kind of configuration geared towards the ICS. We are beginning to look at the next generation use cases now. We actually have a couple partners here we're spending some time with this week. We're looking very heavily at analytics, asset management, as well as cyber security. But the idea is not to move it forward as a piece of hardware. The idea is to move the software generation forward and the service forward, and then the hardware kind of follows that. So we're really focusing our next round of delivery on integrated security. So we're building a lot of security capability, tamper-proof mechanisms. Like I said, there's a lot of self-protection telemetry in the system. So while Stratus isn't necessarily in the interest of maybe building a security platform itself, but building the awareness and the telemetry into it for different software packages is kind of where we're going to head. So if you think about an example of somebody plugs a USB key into our system, well, maybe that's just enough for us to say, you know what, that's probably a problem. There aren't supposed to be people at this site. So if somebody's plugging a USB stick into it, that's a problem, and it should log a service ticket with us, so we can then take it from there. Or if there's a bad digital signature, you look at some of the things going on with application whitelisting and things like that. Those are the types of solutions we're looking at integrating into the box. And then, of course, there'll be a corollary service set of triggers that will be part of the monitoring exercise. The other thing we find is anomalies in terms of how the application performs. Because we use networking to manage the synchronicity between the systems, one other thing we can do is actually start to understand what's going on within the guest itself with the application. So the idea here is really for us to move beyond system protection into security and application protection, so we can actually protect the full host and really eliminate the need for IT to intervene altogether. Of course, the last kind of step for us is, your smart cities, your augmented reality, all the fun, cool stuff that frankly, we're trying to figure out how it's going to be deployed at the edge and what it's going to do. We're starting to work on that with folks, and the idea is how can we make our infrastructure more fog-like, and how can we do a lot more integration with cloud. So I'm ready for questions. Like I said, appreciate your time listening in on this. We know it's a little bit of a different approach, but we think it's pretty exciting. And like I said, I think probably in the next 90 days, you'll be hearing some of our partners who will be picking this up and bringing it to market right out of the gates. Questions? Yeah.
Did you have a timeline for generations 2 and 3?
I'd say we'd be looking at generation 2 in early 2019. I don't have a timeline for generation 3 yet. Yeah.
Generation 2 eventually that integrated security. What type is that for generation 1?
Generation 1, what we're running is pretty much a Linux capability built in. It has your basic access control. It has encryption. We will support multiple cloud connectivity clients, so we'll support Predix and Azure connectivity. So if you want to have an encrypted connection back to the back end. So we have some security capability in there, but really when we focus in on like the really deep hardening of the system, we're going to go off on generation 2. We actually have a customer presentation on Wednesday. I'll be doing a workshop with one of our customers who's deployed one of the beta units. So they'll be talking a little bit about how they're securing the system and what they're doing, because they're connecting that to Predix as well. Yeah.
So for somebody that wants a specific set of applications, say OneWare or OSI,
Yeah.
did you do that and send it already installed, or does that go through your partners?
No. Really the way it works is we generally go through SIs and distributors, so they're the ones who add the software on top. We're just trying to make their lives easier. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, in the back. Bill.
The core OS is your underlying typical Stratus, and then you said there's Linux available for user applications?
Actually, let me flip that around for you. So Everrun itself is a hardened and highly available Linux operating system that we put in the market today. This new system, we took Everrun and took a lot of the guts of it, but we've extended it and added a lot more to it, to the point where it's actually a little bit different. We're not even going to brand it as Everrun in this solution, but the point is we're leveraging our own Linux, our own redundant Linux offering, and extending it and putting the telemetry into it.
What about then relative to Object Boundary within this framework? There's a lot of similarities at the app level.
We're starting to look at it. We don't have anything to announce today on that front, though. Any other questions? Wow.
3 samples.
So we'll actually, hopefully, fingers crossed, my lips to God's ears, is that we'll actually have somebody on stage with us Wednesday. I mentioned we'll have a customer presenting with us, but we'll actually have one of my guys on my team who is not a engineering guy, he's a BD guy. We'll actually unbox it and set it up while we're here, so we can actually prove that it can be done in under an hour. We'll see how it goes.
You like taking the risks?
We do. We want to show it off. And then, like I said, we have a number of new content coming out for that stuff. And kind of a big part of our strategy in the first half of the year is actually getting it into demo centers of a lot of our partners. So that's something that our marketing team and the sales team are working on right now. Oh, we'll be at the booth. Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Okay, so there we go. So you can see it. Cool. Thank you all. Have a good one.